And who is involved with this? You're a Jewish American, and how many? Who else? Is there organizations behind it, sponsoring it?
We really have people supporting us all over the world. We have Israelis supporting us, we have Palestinians, we have American Jews, we have American Muslims. It's really a network of people who put this together. We don't have a lot of funding, we sort of throw our money in a hat. But we do have a number of organizations. The U.S. campaign supports us, ICAD supports us, Badil supports us. So there's a lot of, we're part of Apartheid Week last year. So we're really working with a lot of people, and we hope that there will be one place at least people can go for comprehensive information on apartheid in Israel and Palestine.
Well, thank you very much for the interview.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Stan.
Cindy Sheehan lost her son in Iraq in 2004. She received national attention and electrified the peace movement when she camped in front of then George Bush's ranch in Crawford, Texas, demanding a meeting to discuss the reasons for the war. We had her speech in New York City on our program some weeks back. I'm just going to show you one of the answers to one of the questions after the talk, a question I asked her about her appearance in May's Al-Auda, the Palestinian Right to Return Convention.
Your question. Yes, I spoke at the Al-Auda Convention in Anaheim, and it is a Palestinian rights convention, the right of return. And my, I support that. I support that cause. This is another thing. Barack Obama went to Egypt and he gave a pretty speech. And he said, the only thing he said about the Israel-Palestinian thing was that Israel shouldn't expand into the West Bank. And I've just found out today that they are expanding into the West Bank. And they have been. But he doesn't say anything about the walls in the West Bank that keep people from their jobs and from their lands and from hospitals and medical attention. And he didn't go to Gaza. He went to I think it was Buchenwald, and talked about the horrible prison, Bergen-Belsen. I said that the other day, and someone said, no, it's Buchenwald. So he went to Bergen-Belsen, and he was talking about horrible concentration camps, but he didn't go to Gaza and talk about that horrible concentration camp. And I think any solution, if there is a solution, if people even want a solution, I know we do, I'm not so sure the Robert class wants a solution, that it has to include the right of return. It has to include the right of return.
Jeff Bartos is a former medic who was stationed in Iraq in 2005. He's secretary of the Connecticut chapter of Iraq Veterans Against the War. He gave a talk about PTSD earlier this year in Connecticut at Central Connecticut State University.
In January 2009, more U.S. soldiers committed suicide than died in combat. 24 deaths have been ruled suicide, and 16 died as a result of enemy action. Colonel Kathy Platani, chief clinical psychologist for the Army Reserve and National Guard, said that the long, cold months of winter could be a major contributor to the January spike. There is more hopelessness and helplessness because everything is so dreary and cold. Hi, I'm Jeff Bartos. I'm the secretary of the Connecticut chapter of Iraq Veterans Against the War. Just want to thank Aaron for holding this panel. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know very much about the clinical pathology of post-traumatic stress disorder, and there might be some rough topics in here. So, I joined the Army in 2003 as a combat medic. A few days right after the U.S. began bombing Baghdad, and I believed in the reasons for the invasion initially. I deployed to Iraq with the 442 Field Artillery with 4th Infantry Division in December of 2005 to December of 2006. I spent about 8 months on patrols and 4 months in an aid station and on call for gate ambulance coverage, and did some not fun things. Over the course of my year, for a while I was getting 2 to 4 hours of sleep when I was trying to get 6 to 8 and taking 50 milligrams of Benadryl a night without any effect. My roommate even commented that I wasn't getting any sleep because he could just watch me toss and turn because he was on a different schedule. I came home and probably had some symptoms of PTSD. Couldn't really tell you. I never went to get checked out. Became, I guess, hyper alert with more aggressive driving. I speed like it's going out of style now, and I still swerve to avoid trash on the roadsides. I also don't really like malls or movie theaters. I don't know if that's just me or the crowd thing. A few recurring mental images, and for the following 6 months after I got back, while I was still at Fort Hood, Texas, I self-medicated, drank pretty heavily, showed up to work doing sick call, still drunk a few times, and I had a tough time relating to my family and pretty much anyone who wasn't in my unit. I had thoughts of the upcoming deployment and what was going to happen to my friends who had been stop-loss since I missed the stop-loss date by 30 days. My unit is actually returning from their third deployment this next week. I began a recovery process of, I was discharged from the Army honorably. I went climbing, broke my leg, and got into activism writing in college, so here I am speaking to you. Some of my personal experiences, seen as a combat medic with an artillery unit who did a bunch of patrols, were as follows. We had a soldier who had a bunch of Xanax illegally in country, and he took 3 of them, went into a porta potty, and shot himself. Another one attempted suicide with a pocket knife, and for that he was demoted and kept on tower guard for the rest of the deployment. One soldier shot himself in the foot, said he was playing with his rifle, but he still got a ticket home for 3 months. Being the battalion aid station and the medics, we were often assigned suicide watch for the people that were too much of a hassle for their individual companies. So they would sleep in the back of our aid station and we would keep an eye on them. Alcohol is pretty readily available over there, and it's a matter of getting it, either making your own, which isn't really that hard once you figure it out, getting it from the contractors, Iraqis, or having people mail it to you. We had a few incidences of people being drunk in the towers or out at checkpoints during combat operations. As far as drug abuse, there was the Xanax floating around that someone brought back from leave. People were taking Robitussin DM, drinking the entire bottle and having whatever experiences that gives you, or taking the dust off containers and sucking down those and killing brain cells that way. And there was often drug-seeking behavior coming to our aid station. Quite a bit of depression and anxiety. A lot of people just couldn't handle it, so we took their weapons away and gave them menial jobs, watching people sign into the internet station, stuff like that. One of my medics went into rapid atrial fibrillation and had to be evac to Germany because of the stress, most likely. One of the things that happens with combat soldiers, especially those on patrol, after a while, day in and day out, you get the what I call the fuck 'em mentality, where you're starting to seek revenge. You take it out on the Iraqi civilians, on the detainees, on each other even, had a few fights. And there's no real safe compensatory mechanism. I mean, they have gyms and stuff, played a lot of Xbox, killed a lot of pixels, and you sort of just develop a bond. Some of the treatments for post-traumatic stress disorder that are available through the military are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. I Googled most of this stuff, but it's stuff like Zoloft and a few other various prescriptions. I'm sure the doctor can tell you more about it. Here's a quote. Sandy Moreno was a psychiatric technician in the reserves, and you can't start someone on antidepressants and then not see them again because their unit is moving around. When you put them on those kinds of meds, a lot of times it takes 6 weeks before they take effect, or they can cause side effects. We can never keep good track of a soldier. The counseling services available to people while deployed are limited, and there's a huge stigma attached.